one of the things about being an artist is that we like to, not only do we like to make work, we like to show work. And so I just recently got informed that I got into a local juried show here in Chicago, down at the Governor State University. CSI 2020 is the name of the show. CSI is a local sculpture group. And so what I want to do is kind of take you along my journey and what I go through as I prep for a show, and getting the piece ready and ready to put it out into the next venue. And so with that, so let's get started. Each time a piece gets into a new show, a new venue, it gives me an opportunity to look back at that piece and where that piece came from. You know, the initial thoughts, ideas, inspirations, the trials and tribulations of trying to execute that piece, whether it be procedural or different materials and whatnot. Depending on the piece that gets accepted, and in this case, it's a piece called Arch. It's a wall piece. Designed it for wall and floor, but it's the most dynamic on the wall. So at the time when I did this piece, which has been a couple years now, I was working with several models, but in this case I was working with a rock climber. And so I would have her in her harness and dangling from the ceiling of my shop and really taking the body out of position. Typically when we engage people, we are standing on our feet, shoulders squared to each other and looking at people, and that's how we typically communicate, and that's kind of what all our body language is based on. So, but when you take the body out of that context, I'm really interested in how does that change the subconscious conversation that goes on between our bodies as we're talking. And so in this case, I had her hanging from the ceiling, and so she was twisting and contorting, blurring an arm or a leg as it's moving through space, and trying to capture that motion, that sense of movement. By getting into the show, it draws me right back to the beginning of where I started off with this work. Like I said, I was trying to capture the body, and my abstraction is kind of like cubist or crystalline in nature, but I still wanted there to be this humanity component to it and stuff. So I took a rubber mold off of her body, capturing her shoulder, breast, or down into her belly. You get this, if you're looking for it, you'll come across this, this fleshy texture, and it's this immediate, like, that's a body. But at the same time, as soon as you step back, you get a broader sense of what the overall figure of the motion and the dynamic aspect of the piece. And so you lose track of that humanity. And so it's this juxtaposition or this duality within the piece that, well, it's what creates the tension and the intrigue. Arch has always been one of my kind of favorite signature pieces, and it's exciting to get it back out there. It's really had an interesting journey of initially creating it for a solo show at the Namdi Gallery in Miami. Really in the groove of that, I had all these assistants and different shows and just cranking out the work, really in the vibe, in the flow, and a super exciting time. After the initial show, went back down to Miami a year later for a show at Scope, one of those big art fairs in conjunction with Basel. About a year ago, it was at a show at the Notre Dame Gallery, and so that was a different situation, and was able to play a little bit more with lights. It was cool showing at Scope, but you're really limited on lights and overall atmospheric of these giant tents and thousands of pieces of artwork. Whereas when it was showed at the Notre Dame Gallery, it was a much more intimate space. I had a lot more control over the individual lights, so I could really play with the directionality of the light sources and really kind of emphasize the complexity of the piece by emphasizing the shadows and how they would draw across the wider surfaces of the gallery walls, the gallery space. And so that was a real interesting installation. And so this is the next step in its journey. So, I get to go back and, kind of the beginning of what I was thinking as I'm cleaning up this piece and re-emphasizing it, but yet then taking it into a new space and having an opportunity to kind of revisit and reawaken, those ideas and those thoughts, and see how that is going to change the perception of it. Each space brings out a different language, a different level of communication depending on the viewers involved. I do need to do some cleanup with it. It's been sitting around, and it's made out of aluminum, but even aluminum rusts. It's kind of more of like a white oxide that forms on the surface, and so need to go in, clean and buff that up. The piece has been in and out a couple different shows, and I've noticed there's some cracks here and there from getting it kind of tousled around the studio. So I need to do some welding here and there, clean, like I said, clean up the surface, redraw out the lines. Really make. Now that I have a sense of like what kind of gallery space it's going to go into, I want to detail the piece in such a way that it's going to make the strongest impact in that situation. As I get ready for the installation, I want to make sure that I have all the right tools. Not knowing quite what the situation is, I'm told that it's a standard gallery wall where there'll be a couple layers of drywall but backed with plywood. And if that's the case, I should be able to go in with a single lag bolt, just because that's what they say they have. You never really know. So I'm going to take a selection of anchors and different mounting points, give myself, kind of pack the kitchen sink, so to speak. And so I have a better, chance of solving any kind of wrinkles that might occur during the installation. Because when in doubt, shit does happen. So okay, now that the piece is cleaned up, it's time to load up the sculpture. It will take up the better size of my bed. So as I load it into the truck, I want to make sure that it's secured, capture with a series of straps. Typically, when you're strapping things in, you want to, I suppose, wrapping something around and kind of cinching it down. That it always wants to bind. It never really kind of gives you that snug and secure connection to the truck and the piece. So the best way to do it is, if you have a singular object, is to have one strap come around it and then come around the other side, and so the two straps actually compress and capture that object. And so I'll do that for multiple directions to give myself a more secure fit, and so it'll be rock solid as I drive it down to Governor State, which is roughly about an hour south of here. Time to get moving and head on down to Governor State and to install Arch in their gallery. As it happens, yesterday's trip down to Governor State wound up being a little bit of a bust. Because of COVID, we were allowed to drop the pieces off, but we weren't allowed to actually install them ourselves. It'll be up to the gallery director and his assistants to do the placing and to get things up on the wall, at least for my piece, and they'll determine the lighting and stuff. Like I said, typically I like to have a hand in all that, but obviously that can't always happen, and it's understandable that they want to keep the crowd down to, instead of having all the artists trying to install their work. So I can appreciate that, but I have myself all revved up to be down there and to set up the show. So, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to get down there and check out the show and photograph, document, and whatnot, as well as the Nathan Manilow Sculpture Park is also down on that site, and would love a chance to walk around. It's an outdoor sculpture space, a lot of large-scale installations, public art, and so would love to get a chance to go check those out as well. So hopefully that'll be coming up here shortly, and let me know if this is the kind of content you're digging outside of just doing the how-tos. I do want to do more kind of little, not necessarily documentaries, but spotlights on the different work and pieces I've created in the past and I'm working on now. So, but anyway, interact with the channel. Let me know you're out there. But yeah, I look forward to catching you guys in the next video. And until then, be creative and be safe.